I want to ask you a simple question, but if you answer it honestly, it might make you never look at your work the same way again. Are you working extremely hard, yet life still isn't moving forward very much? You wake up early. You are always the one who leaves late. You rarely say no to extra work because deep down you believe, just try a little harder and everything will be fine. And you're not wrong to believe that. Because for many years, society has taught us that hard work is the path to success. But I want you to pause for a moment here. In the modern world, hard work, if it isn't paired with the right thinking, can become the most dangerous trap of an entire lifetime. I have seen so many people work themselves to exhaustion, yet remain stuck in the same loop. They are busy all day, but when night falls, they have no time to think, and someone who has no time to think will always act on inertia. It's like running on a treadmill. You sweat, you get tired, but the scenery ahead never changes. There is a huge misunderstanding that most of us fall into. We confuse movement with progress. Doing more does not mean going in the right direction. Being busy does not mean you are building a better future. And sometimes blind hard work quietly takes away the most valuable thing you have, the ability to look back and change. In today's video, I want to break down a truth that few people dare to say: why the harder many people work, the poorer they become. Not because they are incompetent, but because they are placing their effort in the wrong place. And stay until the end of the video, because the question at the end may make you reconsider the entire way you have lived, worked, and traded things off for many years. Principle 1: hard work is not the same as progress. I want you to pause for a moment before we go any further. Because if there is one of the biggest misunderstandings I have seen repeated for decades, it is this: many people believe that as long as you work hard, you will move forward. I used to believe that. I used to think that if I did more than others, sacrificed more, endured longer, then sooner or later life would reward me. And for a while, it seemed true. You get paid. You are recognized as responsible. You become someone people can rely on. But then one day you look back and ask yourself, why am I still here? The same job, the same rhythm of life, the same familiar worries. You are not lazy. You are not lacking effort. Yet you haven't gone much further than you were a few years ago. The problem is not that you are not working hard. The problem is that you have confused movement with progress. Let me be very clear about this. You can be busy all day, running from one task to another, solving one problem after another, and still be standing in the same place. Because movement is just activity. Progress is a change in position. A person who rows very hard but rows in the wrong direction will only spin in circles in the middle of the sea. And the most painful part is this: hard work often does a very good job of hiding the fact that you are going the wrong way. It makes you feel deserving. It makes you feel like you did your best. And because of that, you rarely stop to ask, is what I'm doing actually taking me where I want to go? I have met people who work 12 hours a day but don't even have 1 hour to think. No time to learn. No time to reassess the path they are on. They are tired, but not because they are moving forward. They are tired because they are repeating. And when you repeat for long enough, repetition becomes life. One of the most important lessons I have ever learned is this: if you don't take time to think, you will spend your entire life acting out of habit. Hard work, when it is not guided by the right thinking, will turn you into a very effective person at building someone else's life. You complete goals for the company, you carry responsibility for the organization, you help the system run smoothly. But the question is that system serving your life? Many people avoid this question. Not because they don't understand it, but because they are afraid of the answer. Because when you admit that hard work alone is not enough, you also have to admit that you need to change the way you think, not just increase your effort. And changing your thinking is always harder than working extra hours. I used to think that exhaustion was a sign of progress. But later I realized exhaustion is only a sign of energy being spent. It is not always a sign of growth. Plants don't grow faster just because you water them more than necessary. They grow when they are planted in the right place in the right season and cared for in the right way. People are the same. You don't need to abandon hard work. But you do need to question it. Hard work for what? Hard work for whom? And is your hard work actually bringing you closer to freedom? Because if every year that passes, you are only trading more time for money without building anything more sustainable, then no matter how hard you work, you are still standing on the same rung of the ladder. And that is exactly why many of the hardest working people are also the ones who feel the most stuck. But this is only the beginning. Because to understand why society glorifies busyness so much and why we so easily fall into this trap, you need to understand what I'm about to share next. Principle 2: why society glorifies busyness. There is a very deep and very subtle reason why busyness is praised so much. And if you don't see that reason, you can easily spend your entire life chasing things that look right, but lead you off course. I want you to remember this. Society always glorifies what is easy to see. Busyness is very easy to see. The person who arrives early, the person who leaves late, the person who always has something in their hands, the person who always says, "I'm very busy." People like that are often seen as serious, responsible, and reliable. And over time, you start to believe it yourself. If I'm busy, it means I'm doing the right thing. I used to live with that belief. There were periods when my schedule was so full, there was no empty space left. Day after day, I handled tasks, solved problems, fulfilled obligations. And every night I felt tired, but there was also a strange sense of comfort, a feeling that I had earned it. But then I realized an uncomfortable truth: busyness gives you the feeling of progress without requiring real progress. Busyness doesn't require deep thinking. Busyness doesn't force you to ask big questions. Busyness allows you to avoid difficult decisions, decisions that could change your entire life. And that is why society loves busyness. Because a society full of busy people is a society that is easy to operate. Busy people work by the schedule. Busy people follow procedures. Busy people rarely stop to ask, "Why am I doing this?" I have observed this very closely. The people who get praised the most are not always the people who think the best. They are the people who are always busy. And when you are praised for your busyness, you start tying your self-worth to it. If you're not busy, you feel guilty. If you have free time, you feel uneasy. If you sit still to think, you feel like you're wasting time. That is a very dangerous psychological trap, because thinking doesn't make noise, but it creates direction. A person who spends 1 hour thinking correctly can change 10 years of working incorrectly. But society doesn't applaud someone who is quietly thinking. No one sees them. No one can measure it. So busyness is chosen as the metric. I once asked a very hardworking man, "Do you have time to think about your future?" He laughed and said, "I'm too busy. I don't have time for that kind of thing." And in that answer, I saw the entire problem. When you are too busy to think about your life, you are handing the right to decide that life over to circumstances. Busyness makes you reactive, not proactive. Work comes, you handle it. Problems appear, you solve them. But you are rarely the one setting the rules of the game. And over time, busyness becomes a suit of armor. It protects you from the feeling of emptiness. It hides the question, am I actually on the right path? I have been there. And I understand this feeling very clearly, because when you stop to think, you may discover that you have spent many years on a path that does not lead where you truly want to go, and that truth is very hard to face. So many people choose the safer option, stay busy. But let me tell you this very directly. Life does not reward the busiest person. Life rewards the person who understands what they are doing. Busyness is not the enemy. But when it becomes the only standard by which value is judged, it will quietly steal your future. And here is the important thing I want you to carry into the next part. If you are not careful, you will trade your entire life for very short-term rewards. Principle 3, the silent trade-off. Hard work often trades for short-term money, not long-term foundations. There is a truth that very few people realize when they are young. It is this: every day you go to work, you are making a trade. You may not always be aware of it, but it is happening quietly and consistently. You trade your time, you trade your energy, you trade your focus, and in return you receive money. In the short term, this trade seems fair. You work today, you get paid today. Bills get paid. Life goes on. I lived in this kind of trade for a very long time too. But then I began to ask a different question, a question very few people dare to ask while they still have the strength to work. If I stop tomorrow, what will continue to pay me? Most people don't like this question, because the answer is usually very quiet. When you only trade time for money, money stops flowing the moment you stop. Not because you are inadequate, but because that is the nature of the trade. You work, you get paid. You stop, everything stops with you. The problem is, many people make this trade for their entire lives without ever stopping to ask whether they are building anything beyond today. I have met people who worked for 30 years on the same schedule. They were highly skilled, very reliable. But when their strength declined, the value they created declined with it. Not because they no longer had value, but because they had never built a foundation that allowed that value to keep producing benefits. Hard work, when used only to earn short-term money, keeps you living in a very busy present and a very fragile future. You can shop, you can maintain a lifestyle, but you cannot build durability into your life. And the dangerous part is this trade happens very smoothly. No warnings, no red signals. Every month money still comes in. Every year life still moves forward, until one day you realize you have traded away many years but retain very little foundation. I used to think that simply increasing income would make everything better, but later I understood the problem is not how much money you make, it is whether that money continues to create value when you are no longer there. Working hard for money is not wrong. Stopping there is. Because if every year that passes you repeat the same trade, then no matter how hard you work, you are still standing on the same level. And that is why many people at a certain point in life begin to feel anxious, not because they are poor, but because nothing continues to function if they slow down. If this feels like it is touching something inside you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, are the efforts I am making today building something for tomorrow? If these ideas make you think, press subscribe to continue this journey with me. Because what I am about to share next directly relates to the silent cost that blind hard work often takes, and it is not money. Principle 4, the silent cost of blind hard work. There is a cost that very few people account for when they proudly say they are extremely hardworking. That cost is not on a paycheck, it is not in overtime hours, and it cannot be seen immediately. That cost is this: you lose time to think. I want you to understand this clearly because I have seen it repeat itself for many years. When a person works too much, their life begins to operate on reflex. Work comes, they handle it. Problems appear, they solve them. Day after day, they become very good at reacting, but they rarely become the one who proactively asks questions. And I learned something very important. A person who does not ask questions about their own life will let circumstances answer for them. You can be very efficient, very busy, very responsible. But if you do not take time to sit still and think about your direction, you will keep walking the familiar path, even if that path does not lead where you want to go. I have met people who worked their entire lives but never spent a single afternoon asking themselves, what am I building? Not because they didn't care about the future, but because they were too tired to think about it. Fatigue narrows vision. It makes you see only what is right in front of you: bills, responsibilities, obligations. And gradually you begin to confuse survival with progress. This is very dangerous because real growth does not come from doing more, but from thinking differently. 1 hour of correct thinking can be more valuable than a month of wrong work. But society does not teach us this. Society teaches us how to stay busy, how to complete tasks, how to meet expectations. And when you no longer have time to think, you also no longer have time to reassess. You keep doing what you have always done because it is familiar, because it gives you a sense of safety. I have been in that loop. There were periods when I worked nonstop to the point that when I finally had a free day, I felt confused. I did not know what to do with the silence. And in that moment, I realized that I had allowed busyness to occupy all the space meant for thinking. But let me tell you this, if you do not control your time, you will never control the direction of your life. Blind hard work does not just take your energy, it takes away your ability to choose. You do not choose the path, you follow inertia. And when you follow inertia long enough, inertia becomes destiny. If you feel constantly busy, constantly tired, yet rarely clearer about your future, that is not a coincidence. It is a sign that you are spending energy without creating clarity of thought. And this is what I want you to take with you. Hard work is not wrong, but if it takes away your time to think, it is making you weaker, not stronger. Because in this world, the people with real advantage are not those who do the most, but those who understand what they are doing and why they are doing it. And right here, we must face an even more uncomfortable truth. Because if you do not have time to think, someone else will think for you. Principle 5, why the hardest workers are often not the richest. There is a truth I know will make many people uncomfortable. But if you are truly serious about your life, you need to hear this calmly and honestly. The people who work the hardest are not always the richest. And I am not saying this to diminish hard work. I am saying it because I have observed this happen again and again for many years. I have met people who work relentlessly. They arrive early, they leave late, they are always the ones taking on extra responsibility. But as time passes, their lives remain constrained by the same level of income, the same rhythm, the same worries. Meanwhile, there are people who do not work longer hours, who may even appear more relaxed, yet build far greater freedom. The difference is not work ethic, the difference is leverage. I want you to understand this concept correctly. Leverage is the ability for a small effort to create results greater than itself. When you work only with your own labor, the results you produce will always be limited by your time and energy. You only have 24 hours a day. You only have one body. And no matter how hard you try, you cannot exceed those limits. This is not pessimism. This is reality. The problem is many hardworking people never move beyond this level. They sell time, they sell labor, they sell focus, and they become very good at it. But then something subtle happens. When you become too good at using effort, you have less incentive to find ways that require less effort. Hard work at this point becomes an invisible cage. I have observed people like this with respect, but also with deep concern. Because when you create value primarily through your own presence, that value disappears the moment you leave. You rest, work slows down. You get sick, income drops. You stop, everything stops. Not because you are unimportant, but because you never built something that operates beyond you. Leverage allows that to happen. Leverage is when your effort continues to create results even when you are not there. And this is crucial. Those who do not control leverage become leverage for others. You help systems operate. You help organizations reach their goals. You help other people scale their results. But the question is, who is scaling your life? I am not saying this is wrong. Society needs hardworking people like you. But if you spend your entire life becoming leverage for someone else's dream without building leverage for yourself, there will come a time when you feel a very large emptiness. A feeling that you have done a great deal but built nothing that truly belongs to you. I used to believe that as long as I worked well enough, hard enough, persistently enough, everything would sort itself out. But then I understood life does not organize itself for those who do not intentionally design it. Leverage does not appear by accident. It is built through thinking, by asking questions like, will this effort continue to create value when I am not here? Does what I am building depend entirely on my strength? Or can it grow without me having to push it endlessly? These questions are uncomfortable because when you ask them, you must also face the possibility that you have spent many years moving very fast, but in a limited direction. And that is why many people avoid the concept of leverage. They do not lack hard work. They lack time to think differently. But when you begin to understand leverage, you will look at your hard work with new eyes, not as work harder, but as build something that continues to work for me. And here we arrive at one of the most important warnings I have ever shared. A single statement that, if you truly understand it, can change how you view your entire working life. Principle 6, do not confuse movement with progress. If there is one sentence I wish I had understood earlier in life, it is this: do not confuse movement with progress. Because this is not just a warning, it is a mirror. And when you look into it honestly, you will begin to see many things you previously overlooked. I have observed people who work nonstop. They are always in action, always have something to do, always have a reason to be busy. But when I look more closely, I realize that much of that movement did not change their position in life at all. They moved a lot, but did not go far. You can be very good at handling tasks, very fast at solving problems, very efficient at completing assignments. But let me ask you a very direct question. Do the things you are doing every day actually bring you closer to the life you want? Movement often provides a sense of comfort, because when you are doing something, you feel like you are not standing still. But progress is different. Progress requires direction. A person can climb a ladder very quickly, but if the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, speed only helps them be wrong faster. I have made that mistake before. There were periods when I worked more than ever. I optimized every hour of my day. I increased the pace. I increased the intensity. But then I realized I was becoming very efficient at maintaining a life that I had never designed. And that was the moment of awakening. Because progress does not come from doing more. It comes from doing the right things. Movement answers the question, what did I do today? Progress answers the question, did what I did today change my tomorrow? Those two questions look very similar, but they lead to two completely different lives. Many people never ask the second question. Not because they are not intelligent, but because they are too busy to ask. And when you are too busy to question direction, you continue moving by inertia. Inertia does not require thinking. Inertia only requires repetition. But life is not built on inertia. It is built on conscious choice. I once said, activity does not always create achievement. You can spend your entire life being active without ever achieving what truly matters to you. This may sound harsh, but it is true. And I am not saying this to discourage you. I am saying it to wake you up. Because when you clearly understand the difference between movement and progress, you will begin to look at your schedule differently. You will no longer ask, how busy was I today? But instead, what did I do today that truly changed the trajectory of my life? This is where many people stop. Because this question forces accountability. No more blaming circumstances. No more hiding behind busyness. No more using exhaustion as proof of righteousness. And right here, hard work begins to reveal another face. It can become a refuge, a reasonable excuse to avoid changing direction. Principle 7, when hard work becomes an excuse. There is a very subtle truth I have learned over time. People are not always hardworking because they are on the right path. Sometimes they work hard to avoid facing the truth that they need to change. I have seen this in many people, and I have seen it in myself. When you are busy all day, you have no time to listen to your inner voice. You have no space to ask difficult questions. And so hard work becomes a safe refuge. You tell yourself, not yet, after things stabilize, when I have more experience. But the truth is, you are not waiting for a better time. You are postponing a difficult decision. I have met people who perform very well on a path they no longer believe in. They know it, but they continue because busyness allows them to avoid stopping and admitting it. Hard work, in this case, is no longer a virtue. It becomes a reasonable excuse. An excuse to avoid asking, is this path still right for me? Am I living up to my potential? Because those questions are dangerous. They force you to act, and real action always comes with risk. I once realized that working a lot is sometimes much easier than sitting still and thinking clearly. Working gives you a sense of safety. Thinking gives you the truth. And not everyone is ready to face the truth. Some people are not lazy at all. They are very disciplined, very persistent. But they use all of those qualities to maintain a familiar life, not to build a better one. They speed up on the same road instead of stopping to ask whether that road is worth continuing. I want you to ask yourself one question, not to answer quickly, but to truly feel it. Are you working hard because you believe in your direction or because you are afraid to turn in a different one? This is a difficult question, but it is necessary. Because if you are not brave enough to change direction, you will spend the rest of your life perfecting skills on a path that does not lead to freedom. And the most painful part is this: you will become very good at building a life that you did not truly choose. I have been there, and I understand this feeling more than you think. But when you are brave enough to face it, your hard work will begin to take on a different meaning. It will no longer be a tool for avoidance. It will become a source of energy to build what is right. And here we begin to touch a very big difference. Because there are people who do not work less, but place their hard work in the right place. They do not just work, they build. Principle 8, where the wealthy apply hard work. I want you to understand this clearly. From the beginning, wealthy people do not work less than you. They simply apply their hard work in a different place. And that difference creates a very large gap over time. I have observed this for many years. People who build true freedom are not those who avoid labor. They work hard too. They go through exhausting periods as well. But they are guided by a different question. While most people ask, what do I need to do next today? They ask, will what I am doing today continue to create value when I am no longer here? That question changes everything. Because when you work only to complete tasks, you are consuming energy. But when you work to build, you are accumulating. Building does not always produce immediate results. Often it is the opposite. Building requires you to accept working very hard while results have not yet appeared. And that is why most people lack patience for it. I once said income helps you live, but assets give you freedom. Wealthy people understand this difference very clearly. They do not only ask, how much am I earning? They ask, will this continue to deliver value 5 years from now? Is today's effort creating momentum for tomorrow? And therefore, they use their hard work to build things that can stand without needing them to keep pushing. These things are not always large. Sometimes it is simply creating a better method, a clearer structure, a foundation that can scale. Meanwhile, many people use all of their energy just to keep things from falling apart. They work to maintain, they repair, they solve problems, and the next day they do the same thing again. Wealthy people also work hard, but they place their effort into things that can multiply. They are willing to accept periods of lower income in exchange for a more durable foundation. And this requires something very rare, the ability to delay gratification. They accept working in silence, accept not being recognized immediately, accept moving slowly in the present in order to go very far in the future. I have seen many people move very fast, but stop very early. And I have seen people move very slowly, but never have to return to the starting point. The difference is not speed. It is what you are building. If you work only to earn money for this month, you will always have to work for next month. But if you use your hard work to build a foundation, then with each passing year, your life becomes less dependent on your own labor. I am not saying this is easy. I am saying it is worth it. And before we finish, I want you to carry one final question, a very simple question, but if you are honest with it, it can change how you see your entire journey. Principle 9, the awakening question. I want you to pause here for a moment. Not to listen more, not to nod in agreement, but to truly listen to yourself. Because after everything we have talked about up to this point, there is one question that sooner or later anyone who is serious about their life must face. It is not a question about money. It is not a question about work. It is a question about direction. Are you tired because you are moving forward, or tired because you are running in circles? These two feelings look very similar. Both exhaust you, both drain your energy. But only one of them brings you closer to the life you want. I have been tired from moving forward, and I have also been tired from running in circles. The difference lies here. When you are tired from moving forward, you can rest, and tomorrow you still know where you are going. But when you are tired from running in circles, no matter how long you rest, you return to the same place, the same rhythm of life, the same worries, the same feeling that you are very busy, but unclear about what you are actually building. This question does not require an immediate answer. It requires honesty. If you stop tomorrow, what in your life would continue to operate? Not to blame yourself, but to look reality straight in the face. Because reality is always neutral. It does not judge. It only reflects the choices that have been repeated long enough. Many people avoid this moment, not because they do not understand it, but because they fear the answer will force them to change. And change always requires leaving what is familiar. I am not here to tell you that you must quit your job or that you must do something extreme. I am here to remind you of something very simple. If each year that passes you only trade more time for money without building additional foundations, then you are not moving forward. You are only getting older in the same loop. And the saddest thing is not that you chose the wrong path. The saddest thing is that you never stopped to ask where you were going. I have learned that life does not change when you gain more information. It changes when you experience a moment of awakening deep enough that you cannot return to the old way anymore. Maybe that moment is today, not because you watched a video, but because you dared to ask a question you had always avoided before. And if you truly listen, you will know what you need to do next. Not immediately, but enough to change direction. I want you to remember one very important thing. Working hard is not a mistake. The mistake lies in being taught that hard work alone is enough. Throughout this video, we did not talk about doing less. We talked about doing things in the right place. You have seen that. Hard work can keep you busy without moving you forward. Busyness can hide the fact that you are going in the wrong direction. Trading time for money can sustain the present, but rarely builds the future. And if you do not have time to think, you will let circumstances decide for you. This does not make you weaker. On the contrary, realizing it is a sign of maturity. Because at some point in life, everyone must face the question, what am I building with all of this effort? Not to blame yourself, but to take responsibility for the road ahead. I have learned that life does not change when you simply do more. It changes when you ask the right questions and have the courage to adjust your direction. You do not need to tear everything down. You do not need to change everything overnight. But you do need to start using your hard work to build, not just to maintain. If what you heard today resonated with you, press like to help this video reach more people. And subscribe to Jim Rohn Treasures if you want to continue this journey of awakening where we do not just talk about success, but about freedom, foundations, and intentional living. I want to ask you one question before we end. Out of all the principles today, which one made you stop and think the longest? Share it in the comments, because sometimes your answer is exactly what someone else needs to hear. I will end with something I have always believed. Success is not a destination, it is the path you choose every single day. I truly appreciate you staying until the end of this video. And if today you dared to look back at your direction, maybe, just maybe, this is the day everything begins to change.